Let's start today's training session on classic children's novels. As with any of these training sessions, we're just getting sort of a foundation that we can build upon later. I'll be mentioning some particularly famous examples of classic children's novels and just kind of giving a brief overview as we go through them. As we go through, don't forget to pause for notes or just to process information. Let's go ahead and get started. Our objective for today is to explore classic children's novels that have stood the test of time, focusing on their themes, characters, and the impact they have had on literature and young readers. Now, these are books that when they came out were extremely popular, sold tons, propelled their authors into stardom if they weren't already there to begin with. But many of these books have been around for more than a century. So, frequently these books are ones that you've probably seen a movie or TV show adaptation, or sometimes there'll be an adaptation that isn't the exact story, but it's using a lot of the themes from it. These are the types of books that sort of set up a lot of the themes and stories that are popular even today. They're beloved for being timeless, meaning they've stood the test of time. They have memorable characters. If you saw our first slide, you might have recognized, even with the art style not being familiar, that this would be Alice from Alice in Wonderland, or Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. Classic children's novels address universal themes and provide important life lessons, making them enduring favorites for generations. And when we say generations, we mean literally going back to your grandparents, your great-grandparents, if you're somebody younger who's watching this, might have read and enjoyed some of these books. Let's go ahead and look at one of those books, this one being Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. It came out all the way back in 1883, and it's one of the most famous adventure novels, if you want to categorize that in your brain. It introduced readers to pirates, treasure maps, and high seas adventures, which of course is something that you would see in countless stories going beyond that. Many of these characters that are mentioned in these stories are important to know, such as Jim Hawkins, the main character. He discovers a treasure map and embarks on a journey to find the buried treasure. Along the way, he encounters the infamous pirate Long John Silver, name you might recognize. Themes include adventure, loyalty, courage, and the moral complexities of piracy. And again, impact of this, as with most of them that we'll look at, is that there's been countless adaptations, and if you think of a pirate-themed story, you're probably going to think of Treasure Island. Let's go ahead next and look at The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Mark Twain is an extremely important author that you'll be looking at a lot as we go through these. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer came out in 1876, and it's sort of a classic tale of boyhood adventure and mischief set along the Mississippi River. Keep in mind that setting of the Mississippi River or along it. The novel follows Tom Sawyer, a mischievous boy who gets into various adventures with his friends, including Huckleberry Finn, who also has his own book. Key episodes include Tom's adventures in the graveyard, at school, and on a treasure hunt. The themes would be childhood, friendship, freedom, and basically morality, and the impact is that it remains a staple in American literature. You are very likely, if you are a younger audience watching this, such as elementary or middle school, you are very likely to kind of discuss, maybe read these books in high school or even college, and discuss some of the themes, the historical context of them, things like that. Mark Twain is considered one of the most important American writers, basically, there is. So Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn in particular are two classics that you'll look at probably through all stages of education. The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett is another classic children's story. This one was published in 1911, and it's a heartwarming story about the healing power of nature and friendship. This novel follows Mary Lennox, a spoiled and lonely orphan sent to live with her uncle in England. There, she discovers a hidden, neglected garden, and with the help of new friends, brings it back to life. It had themes of growth, healing, friendship, and the restorative power of nature, and it's been praised for positive messages, and like everything else, adapted into countless adaptations. There's at least one recent one that I can think of that came out within the last 5 or 6 years. Things like plays, TV shows, stuff like that, adapt stories like The Secret Garden. Let's go ahead and move on to Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. This one, which was published in 1952, is a beloved tale of friendship and sacrifice, and it's one a lot of elementary school students still read today. The story centers on Wilbur, a pig who befriends a wise spider named Charlotte. Charlotte writes messages in her web to save Wilbur from being slaughtered, because he's a pig. Themes include friendship, loyalty, the cycle of life, and the power of words. And the impact is that this is an absolute classic of children's literature, like I said, still being read frequently today, despite being over 50 years old, teaching valuable lessons about kindness and perseverance. Next up would be Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll from 1865. It's a whimsical and imaginative journey into a fantastical world, again with countless adaptations, movies, etc., that you may have seen before. The plot of this follows Alice, a young girl who falls down a rabbit hole and encounters a series of bizarre and enchanting characters, including the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, and the Queen of Hearts. Themes include curiosity, imagination, just kind of absurdity. Its impact is that, again, countless memorable characters, timeless influence, etc. Now, those are just a few examples of classic children's literature. We'll look at some more examples too. You've probably heard of a lot of those. Let me give you 4 adventure novels to test what you remember. In which one does Jim Hawkins leave the Admiral Benbow Inn and sail aboard the Hispaniola? Take a second. Is that Gulliver's Travels, Treasure Island, Kidnapped, or Robinson Crusoe? All sort of classic adventure stories, not all necessarily children's adventure stories, but all adventure stories. Which one of these would be the correct answer? Let's go ahead and check. And if you put Treasure Island, which was the first one we looked at, you'd be correct. It's a novel about a classic pirate adventure that follows Jim Hawkins as he embarks on a journey to find buried treasure. Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift is also an adventure story that follows a guy named Lemuel Gulliver and his sort of voyages to strange lands. If you've heard of Lilliput or Lilliputians, tiny little people, that's a part of that story. Kidnapped is another Robert Louis Stevenson novel about a young boy's journey after being kidnapped. And Robinson Crusoe, which I personally really love because I like survival stories, is a story by Daniel Defoe about a man's survival on a deserted island. And we'll go ahead and wrap up here. We'll continue to look at classic children's literature as we go forward. Thanks for paying attention.